Good afternoon. Welcome to this webinar on One Audit, Assess Once, Comply to Many. My name is Kishore Vaswani, and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of ControlCase. I really appreciate the time you've taken today to attend this webinar on One Audit. Our agenda today is to really focus on integrated compliance. We'll go over a brief of ControlCase. We'll talk about the different regulations for which integrated compliance is an overall context. We'll spend a majority of our time on integrated compliance because integrated compliance is the problem that we solve using the ControlCase solution of One Audit, which I'll talk about later. So that being said, as I go along, please feel free to put questions in the questions window. A little bit about ControlCase. We focus on IT security certifications and related continuous compliance services. We really focus a lot to make sure that we are not just a checklist auditor, but we follow a partnership approach to do the right thing and make sure your security improves in the process while reducing audit fatigue as you go through your different regulations. We also use SkyCam, our automation-driven automated compliance engine, to help automate and streamline as many tasks as possible within certifications. And here are some of the certification services we provide. Of course, we'll spend some time on One Audit, which is assess once, and comply and certify to multiple. All right, that was a brief about ControlCase. Let's talk a little bit about the regulations. Here are some common IT security certifications. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm going to go through some of them just as a backdrop so we understand when we talk about integrated compliance, what are the different compliance regulations that could be integrated into a single program. PCI DSS focuses on security of credit and debit card data. It focuses on ensuring the payment chain is secure and ensures that payments made through credit and debit card, whether it's a service provider, merchant, bank, etc., follow high security standards. HIPAA focuses on healthcare and healthcare data. It's a law that was passed by the Congress in '96. There have been various updates after that, but just like PCI DSS focuses on credit card, HIPAA focuses on healthcare data. ISO 27001 and SOC 2 are general purpose standards that don't focus on any specific type of data, but really focus on security and controls across an organization and across business processes. They generally focus on security, confidentiality, availability, privacy, and so forth. So ISO 27001 and SOC 2 are examples of more general purpose security regulations that exist out there. SOC 2 is obviously an AICPA followed standard and which is given by CPA firms. ISO 27001 is given by ISO auditors as a certification. Now, we want to take some time and show you, as we focus as ControlCase across the globe, what are some of the regulations we are seeing that are regulations and standards we are seeing are popular in the different standards. So for example, in APAC, we see PCI DSS, SOC 2, ISO, very popular. In Americas, of course, whether it's payments, retails, we see all these different standards, and you'll have a copy of these slides. But when we talk about integrated compliance, it is good to think of these regulations for a certain industry, for a certain geography, being a good candidate for an integrated compliance or for a One Audit. So if you're looking here, America's technology, PCI, SOC 2, ISO, and HIPAA is a popular combination and can be done using One Audit. All right, so let's move on to the best practices for integrated compliance. And this section is important because we want to talk about the building blocks of integrated compliance. I want to talk about what are the specific elements that are common across all the different regulations we saw, and hence they can go through a single audit and comply to many. But no matter how many regulations you look at, when you talk about integrated compliance, these are some of the common blocks that exist out there. So, compliance management. If you are managing multiple compliance regulations, it is extremely important to have dashboards and mappings of controls to each other, because otherwise doing it on a manual basis is a very difficult task for even a single regulation, leave alone integrated compliance where you're managing multiple regulations using a set of mapped controls. Almost all regulations out there have policy management. And so policy management is an important component of a compliance aspect that's common across different regulations. And as I go through the webinar, these are specific programs you can match up against your individual enterprise programs to make sure they are part of your integrated compliance program. So we talked about policy management. In today's world, it is very common for companies to outsource certain business processes to third parties or vendors. And while you can outsource business processes and other special functions to third parties, you cannot outsource risk. You're still responsible for maintaining and securing the data that you collect from your customers or your customers' security. And so vendor and third-party management program that ensures you are monitoring your third parties for security is an important aspect of any of the compliance regulations and can be looked at in a singular fashion. What we have also done is we have added in today's world some specific things for cloud that might jog your memory, because I know a lot of you probably either run a cloud company or use cloud for your hosting providers. And so, cloud environments such as AWS can be considered a third party for which you would need a compliance matrix. Asset and vulnerability management is another piece which is common across all the other regulations. Assets keep on changing all the time, so it's important to ensure that you have an ongoing up-to-date list of assets. You're checking them on a periodic basis for vulnerabilities, and then you're making sure that you're closing these vulnerabilities because they are required to be closed by almost all the regulations that exist out there. And so asset and vulnerability management is an important aspect of an integrated compliance program. Logging and monitoring is the next piece. All the assets we talked about generate logs. It doesn't matter whether it's in the cloud. If it's in the cloud, then VMs come into play. If it's in your on-premise, then you have physical machines that might be, which would have applications and operating systems that are generating logs. And every regulation out there requires capturing and monitoring of logs that are generated out of all these systems. Now, it is very difficult to obviously do it in a manual basis. It is very typical for companies to use SIEM or log correlation products to ensure that logging and monitoring is happening on a scalable basis within the organization. Next is change management and monitoring. So as we identify issues from logs, we want to make sure we correlate that against our change request system to see if this is an expected, valid, approved change, or is this something which was not expected. And if this was something that was not expected, you obviously want to escalate that to an incident, which gets us to incident and problem management. So the difference between incident and problem management is that incidents are individual events, are discrepancies that are identified through various mechanisms. Lost laptop, intrusion alerting, change to firewall rule sets that wasn't approved. These are all incidents in an individual basis. Problem management is looking at incidents on a consolidated basis over a period of time. Let's look at all the incidents over the last month. Let's look at all the incidents over the last quarter. let's try to identify projects that are causing systemic issues to solve these systemic issues. So identify projects that will solve these systemic issues that are causing these incidents to happen. And that's really problem management. Data management, when we talked about earlier about PCI, that was credit card data. We talked about HIPAA, that was healthcare data. ISO and SOC were more general purpose, but certainly almost every customer has sensitive data, whether it's IP or customer data. So data management is ensuring that you know where the data is, make sure you can identify which data is more sensitive, and then you can ensure that you are monitoring that data on an ongoing basis. This will involve running scans to identify unknown data. It will involve encryption to protect sensitive data, and so forth. The next one is risk management and rating. All the regulations out there require, typically actually on an annual basis, that you do a risk assessment on an ongoing basis. And typically annually is the minimum required frequency by most regulations out there, but also you want to do a risk assessment after any major change. And when you talk about risk management, certainly with the amount of data that exists out there, risk management has really become a triangulation of various types of data: vulnerability management, data leak prevention systems, log management, and so forth. Vendor management, for if you're using cloud providers, you need to get some feeds from third parties, whether it's a questionnaire or actual evidence. But risk management is the looking of risk from a holistic perspective on at least an annual basis or after any significant change or M&A activity. Business continuity management, obviously a very important aspect of most regulations out there. There are some regulations like PCI which are really focused on confidentiality and security, but most regulations out there also require business continuity. No matter whether the regulations require it or not, every business out there, I guess no better than this time, as is very evident, needs to have a business continuity management program which ensures that in case of issues, the business can go on, and these could be geographic issues, these could be natural disasters, these could be pandemics, and so forth. Certainly, you want to do tabletop exercises to ensure you're ready for business continuity and disaster recovery. And all these regulations, as you can see on the right-hand side, require this as part of complying to those regulations. HR management, although not technical, is required always. We are all businesses. Businesses involve a lot of people, and people, when we talk about people, then we need processes such as training, making sure you have the right practices to hire people, making sure the background check process, make sure the security training and all those different aspects are happening on an ongoing basis for existing employees, but also happening when new employees are onboarded within the enterprise. Physical security, obviously if you use only cloud, this will not be applicable because your cloud provider's compliance matrix will typically cover physical security. But if you, like many companies out there that have on-premise, badges, visitor access, CCTV, and biometric are examples of physical security controls that are required by most regulations out there. So before I move on, let me just again show a list of what we call the building blocks of an integrated compliance program. No matter whether you use ControlCase's one audit service or a GRC product or anything else, at the end of the day, the building blocks are fairly similar. And when we send these slides, you can obviously take these and ensure that you have looked at these from an integrated perspective, or have looked at it even from a plain single compliance or security perspective as building blocks and programs for a holistic integrated compliance program. Just a reminder, as we go through, please feel free to put any questions in the questions window, and we'll make sure we answer them once we are done with the webinar. So the next section talks about common challenges. We talked and showed about half a dozen regulations out there. There are multiple dozens of, I call it international and national IT security regulations. And there's probably hundreds of statewide and individual country-wise privacy and security regulations. So a common challenge obviously is to ensure that all these are managed in a streamlined manner. And obviously, while all these regulations increase, the budgets keep on getting tighter. So you got to do more with less budget. Typically, a lack of compliance dashboard. Typically, there are different groups working on different aspects of IT compliance instead of an integrated compliance program. Regulations are increasing. While all this is happening, sometimes environments change due to M&A. And then finally, when we talk about compliance, it's not only identifying issues, it's actually fixing issues, whether it's internal or for third parties. So if you look at the list over here, these are very common challenges across all organizations on on IT compliance, IT security compliance, because these are we live in a world where the regulations keep on increasing and the complexity keeps on increasing. So from a control case perspective, what we have done is we have a solution called One Audit. And essentially, One Audit means you assess once, we assess once, and you comply to multiple regulations. And how do we do it? Well, we have SkyCam, our technology that enables it. But at the core of SkyCam is our content. And what we have done is we have taken all these different regulations, converted them to English-like questions, which make for an assessment or an audit plan. And these questions and regulations are mapped to multiple standards. So hence, in this example, if we are able to answer question number 4, you can see it meets a whole bunch of requirements across PCI, ISO, HIPAA, and SOC 2 as an example. So core to the One Audit solution is ControlCase proprietary content that has converted all these complex regulations out there into English-like questions and map them so that we can ask that question once and comply to many regulations. As you can see, if you get, as an example, compliant to PCI, you're already compliant to SOC 2, ISO, and HIPAA. The more green it is, the more compliant you are. So if you're 100% compliant to PCI, for the same environment and scope, you're 75% compliant to HIPAA. And so obviously you can see how the processes start to get efficient when you use One Audit. We obviously use technology, which is automation and compliance and data discovery. And here are some statistics which ControlCase has captured over the last decade over thousands of customers. Typically, customers, before they engaged us for one audit, they spent close to 2,200 hours complying or certifying to 4 regulations: PCI, ISO, SOC 2, and HIPAA. Once they implemented One Audit, the time and effort spent was about 40% of the original effort, because of all the efficiencies that come with mapping the regulations and really the efficiencies that come in evidence collection. This saves time for the customer, and it obviously saves time for us and helps everybody in both time as well as cost. So 3 key areas of focus: continuous, automated, integrated. If here at ControlCase, we focus on these 3 things: continuous compliance, automated, and then integrated compliance. And really, any customer of ours who works with us really over time graduates to these 3 vectors of focus as it comes to compliance. Our final slide, certainly at ControlCase, we value being a partner to you rather than just an auditor. We use technology and we do it on a continuous basis. That being said, we are right at the point where we can now answer questions that you have. As I had mentioned, please put questions in the questions window and we will answer them in the order that we receive them. So please feel free to put any questions in the questions window. The first question is, in today's world where people are using cloud, how does integrated compliance work when a bunch of controls are dependent on your cloud provider? So that's a great question. Typically, the cloud providers, for each regulation out there, so for PCI, for ISO, they will provide you a list of controls that they are responsible for. And then they'll provide you the list of controls that you are responsible for as a customer of that cloud. So if you are, so when you are going through an assessment, let's say physical security, both, say you're doing PCI, ISO, and HIPAA, and you're using a cloud. When it comes to physical security, you'll notice that when you get the matrix from your cloud provider, they will say physical security is their responsibility, and they will typically provide their PCI certification, their ISO certification, and their HIPAA compliance report, which you can then provide to an integrated compliance program. So it takes the physical security controls as compliant and dependent on, on the third, on the third party. The next question is, does one audit support privacy management, which is things like ISO 27701 and CSA star? And the answer is yes, we do support. Our questionnaire supports both security as well as privacy controls. Many regulations out there now bridge security and privacy. Some, like GDPR, are more privacy related. Obviously, some like ISO may be more security related, but with an extension like 27701 for privacy. Our questionnaire integrates both of these, which is privacy as well as security. Thank you for that question. The next question is, which certification should we go for, SOC 2 or ISO or both? And what is the commonality between the two? Both, as I had mentioned earlier, both SOC 2 and ISO 27001 are general purpose ones. Certainly SOC 2 Type 2, which is provided by a CPA firm, typically provided by a CPA firm, is a more popular one in the United States. ISO is typically more popular internationally, but we have seen very commonly that customers in the US, in Europe, and in Asia Pac actually do one audit for ISO 27001 and SOC 2. So they assess ones, comply to many, and then they get the ISO and SOC 2 auditors to certify them to the different regulations. So it's a common, ISO and SOC 2 is a common combination for general purpose IT certification across the board. As I said, SOC 2 more US, ISO more international, but those lines are blurring as we go along. The next question is, do we need to buy individual modules for each compliance? And the answer is no. ControlCase actually provides the technology and the questionnaire as part of our standard certification process. What we sell is IT certifications, IT compliance, and continuous compliance. So all the tools for the regulations that you choose to comply or certify to, and all the mappings are included with our compliance and certification services. The next one is, which firewall would you recommend as part of these certifications for internal use? I think various firewalls and DLP tools are common out there that in today's environment. And so I've seen Symantec, Norton, Microsoft. All of these have good technologies that can be used as DLP/personal firewall solutions out there. But again, most regulations also do require it. So any of these technologies should be good. Well, that was the last question. I thank everybody for their time. We will send out a copy of these slides and this recording next week. Have a great rest of the week, and we look forward to you joining us on a future webinar, which you can sign up for at www.controlcase.com. Have a great day.